You guys, what if I told you that one jersey, just one single jersey, could leave an entire football world speechless? And what if, after the final bid reached an unbelievable $110,000, even the FIFA president couldn't hide his reaction? Honestly, this wasn't just about fabric anymore. It had become a symbol of a moment the world simply couldn't forget. The room didn't erupt all at once. No. It happened in waves. The kind of silence that only exists when everyone realizes they're witnessing something far bigger than they expected. You could almost hear the collective breath being held as the auctioneer glanced around the room, waiting, watching, letting the tension stretch just a little longer. 100,000. A pause. Then another paddle slowly lifted into the air. 105,000. Another heartbeat. $110,000. Sold. For a brief second, nobody moved. It wasn't because they didn't know what had happened. It was because they were trying to process what they had just witnessed. Honestly, can we talk about this for a second? How does a single football jersey reach a value that most people would never even imagine? And more importantly, how does Jimin somehow turn every object connected to him into something people see as priceless? Because this wasn't just any jersey. This was the jersey imagined to have been worn during the FIFA World Cup Final performance. The moment millions of people around the globe watched in complete amazement as music and football collided under one breathtaking sky. If you close your eyes for just a second, you can almost see it again. The stadium lights cutting through the night like stars falling to earth. More than 80,000 people inside the stadium. Millions more watching from every continent. The energy wasn't loud yet. It was waiting. Building. Breathing. Then suddenly, the music began. A single spotlight appeared. And there he was. Walking forward with that calm confidence only Jimin seems to possess. Not rushing. Not forcing attention. He never has to. The attention simply follows him. Every step felt deliberate. Every movement carried elegance. Every expression somehow balanced softness with unbelievable strength. It's something fans have talked about for years. How does he make something so difficult look effortless? How does someone command an entire stadium without saying a single word? Even now, people still can't fully explain it. And maybe that's exactly why moments connected to him continue to grow in meaning long after the lights fade. Because they aren't remembered only by the eyes. They're remembered by the heart. The imagined auction room understood that better than anyone. Collectors weren't simply raising paddles. They were raising memories. One bidder wasn't looking at a jersey. They were remembering where they had been when they watched that unforgettable performance. Another wasn't thinking about money anymore. They were remembering how the stadium exploded with purple lights. Someone else remembered the goosebumps that appeared the moment Jimin smiled into the camera. Funny, isn't it? Sometimes memories become more valuable than the objects themselves. And just when everyone thought the auction had reached its peak, something unexpected happened. A quiet conversation began near the front of the room. Phones started appearing. People whispered to one another. Expressions changed. It wasn't another bid. It wasn't another collector. It was news that, in this fictional scenario, the extraordinary result had reached some of football's highest circles. Imagine this for a moment. The FIFA president being informed that the commemorative jersey connected to the World Cup final performance had just sold for an astonishing $110,000. For a second, even he pauses. Then a smile. Not a dramatic one. Just the kind of smile people make when they realize they've witnessed something unique. Because numbers tell one story. Emotion tells another. And this number wasn't simply about value. It represented impact. The imagined reaction wasn't centered on luxury. It was centered on cultural influence. How often does something connected to a halftime performance continue inspiring conversations long after the final whistle? How often does music become part of football history in such an unforgettable way? That's what made everyone stop and think. Because football isn't only about goals. It's about moments. The moments people tell their children decades later. The moments that become documentaries. The moments that somehow refuse to disappear. And somehow, Jimin had become part of one of those memories. Not by replacing football, but by adding another emotional layer to it. Honestly, that's incredibly beautiful when you think about it. Fans weren't celebrating because a jersey became expensive. They were celebrating because something deeply meaningful had been recognized. There's a difference. A very important difference. Money fades. Emotion doesn't. And that's why, even years later, people still replay those performances. Not to count dance moves. Not to analyze camera angles. But to remember how they felt. Because that's Jimin's greatest gift. He makes people feel. The imagined performance itself carried an atmosphere that almost felt unreal. Smoke drifting across the enormous stage. Golden lights reflecting from every direction. Fireworks exploding high above the stadium roof. The roar from the audience becoming so overwhelming it almost drowned out the music. Yet somehow, in the middle of all that chaos, Jimin looked completely calm. There's something almost poetic about that. Everything around him was exploding with energy. But he remained graceful. Gentle. Focused. Like the eye of a storm. Can we seriously appreciate how rare that is? Most performers become louder as the crowd grows louder. Jimin does something different. Sometimes, he becomes quieter. More controlled. More precise. And somehow, that makes people pay even more attention. One tiny glance. One subtle smile. One controlled breath before the chorus. Those little moments become unforgettable. That's what fans notice. Not because they're searching for perfection, but because those human moments make him feel real. You can imagine someone holding that jersey after the auction finally ended. Running their fingers across the fabric. Not seeing threads. Not seeing stitching. Seeing memories. Hearing echoes of applause. Feeling stadium vibrations. Remembering that unbelievable night when music connected millions of strangers through one shared emotion. And just when you think that's the entire story, there's another layer. Outside the auction venue in this imagined scenario, fans begin talking. Not about the price. About what the jersey represented. Social media fills with emotional posts. I still remember watching that performance with my family. I cried that night. I've never forgotten his smile. I can't believe something from that moment became part of history. Notice something? Almost nobody starts with the money. They start with the memory. That's incredibly powerful. Because memories are what truly increase value. Not markets. Not trends. Not headlines. People. Real people. Real emotions. Real experiences. And perhaps that's why even those outside the BTS fandom found themselves fascinated. Football supporters. Music lovers. Collectors. Fashion enthusiasts. Everyone seemed to see something different inside the same jersey. One person saw sports history. Another saw artistic excellence. Another saw global culture coming together. All of those perspectives somehow existed at once. It's honestly amazing. And you know what makes this even more emotional? Imagine Jimin himself hearing about the result. Not because of the amount, but because millions of people still cherished a moment he helped create. Can you imagine that feeling? Creating something that continues inspiring people long after you've walked off the stage? That's every artist's dream. Not fame. Not records. Connection. Real connection. The kind that survives time. The kind that can't be measured. The kind that quietly lives inside people's hearts. And somehow, that imagined World Cup final performance continues finding new ways to bring people back together. Even through something as simple as a jersey. Or maybe not so simple after all. Because sometimes, an ordinary piece of clothing becomes extraordinary when it's woven together with unforgettable memories. And just when it feels like the excitement has finally settled, another unexpected conversation begins, leaving everyone wondering whether this remarkable story is still far from over.